Hi everyone, I'm David Bruce. I'm here to talk to you about expanding your business online and offline with flexible solutions from PayPal. All right, let's get into it. So this is the agenda I'm going to go through. This is the information I'm going to share today. Firstly, I'm going to start talking about what's happening in the world, and I don't want to lead with a negative note, but this is a real impact happening to small businesses around the world. And so, what we at PayPal have been trying to do is really help and support the small business community. And so, I'm going to talk about some ways in which you, as a small business, can adapt to the changing market environment that you've seen over the course of 2020 related to the COVID pandemic. First of all, we'll talk about how you could potentially move online as a new alternative way to sell that gives you access to a broader customer base, and then also helps you effectively future-proof your business in times of change. We're also going to talk about the role that mobile has been playing within the pandemic and how consumers have adapted to new sorts of environments and the way that that's working in terms of both online commerce, but also in-store commerce as well. And then lastly, we'll talk about how that will work with your existing in-store environment and in your existing in-store payments experiences. And so hopefully what you'll take away is some very meaningful and very specific actions you can take to really start thinking about how you diversify your business in ways for, quite frankly, a new world. First of all, though, I want to talk about PayPal. And you'll feel like some of this is a little bit of a pitch for PayPal. And so it's certainly not meant to be. It's certainly meant to be guidance using PayPal as an example. There are other platforms and other payment services around the world that can be helpful. But we do have a very vested interest in the small business community. That's the heart of our business and an area that we quite frankly have driven our company forward around a purpose for helping support that customer cohort. And so our business is very values driven. And so we've been trying to help companies throughout the COVID experience. And so this is just a quick video to kind of show you some of the things that we've been doing throughout the period of 2020. So as you can see, the key takeaway really is that you're now in a new world. But businesses of all sizes are in this sort of new world order. And you have to be very adaptive to that. You have to be nimble and you have to navigate, quite frankly, some complexity. And so it's not as simple as it was before. There's multiple avenues you can use as an opportunity, but also have some level of requirements against them that can be complicated. What we're going to talk about is how you address that continuum from being online through how you use mobile and how you sync that with your existing store. Firstly, is just talk about the way that the world has shifted, and we've been fortuitous to be able to see across the world how the world has changed, and what we believe is that this is not necessarily a short-term change, but actually the environment has shifted in a way that will sustain over time as well. In fact, what we're hearing is that in particular for commerce, what we've seen is an acceleration of a trend to move from offline to online, or a combination of both, omni-channel, and that trend has accelerated over the last 6 months by about 3 to 5 years, meaning that there was a trajectory already happening, but what's happened is that COVID has just accelerated that trajectory in a material way. And it's happened both with businesses, and so you're seeing tremendous amounts of businesses set up new stores online that weren't there before, or also looking at selling inventory into marketplaces, which is another type of channel that you could be successful in. But we're also seeing consumers adopt online as a key method to be able to transact, buy goods and services. And what we expect is that won't completely sustain over time, but you'll certainly see that this is a permanent shift for a lot of people in terms of how commerce happens. And so now is the right time to really think about capitalizing on that, but also setting up a kind of safety net for any scenario that happens later that you will need to immediately adapt to. And so for us, we're really more relevant now than we've ever been. And that's really because we have a kind of suite of different services that can really help all of those different stages from the business life cycle. Particularly in online, the beginnings of our company were really related to how we enabled transactions online. For us, the most important thing we believe in commerce is the ability to transact. If you can't transact, you don't have the sale. So there's clearly like a immediate relevance for the button itself, for PayPal, but also the other types of payment facilitation that happen. And there's been a shift that I'll talk about it in a little bit about the way that consumers have used payment methods in different types of environments. And then also different types of opportunities in terms of how payment cycles can work, bringing money forward to the business and having an entity like PayPal basically defer the cost for the consumer. And so I'll talk about credit and some other areas that are helpful. We've also invested heavily in responding to the way that consumers now need to have contactless experiences in store and online. And so our answer to that for the US specifically is QR codes, which you're starting to see a lot of. And so I'll talk about QR codes and the relevance and how that'll work. But we've also seen a huge uplift in the way that people transfer money between themselves. And so our owned and operated platforms for peer-to-peer transfer like Venmo or PayPal are also another way that businesses can start leveraging as a sort of new money source pool. And then, we've sort of retooled our app to make sure that it's easy for businesses to manage those transaction concepts. And then also, we've still continued to invest in how we help folks within the actual store environments. And what you'll see is that the unfortunate nature of the changes we're seeing is that you will likely have to make some pivots with what you're doing in store to really capitalize on the online and mobile experiences that are emerging. But honestly, we can't do any of this without our partners. And so, commerce is not one company providing the full range of services that a business would need. Commerce is a landscape and it's stitched together. In fact, my job is to make sure that when a customer wants to use PayPal in some form of environment, whether that be with syncing their payment inventory with QuickBooks and that data sync, or being able to set up a commerce environment so they can transact online, or even using things like marketing solutions to drive growth, that the infrastructure is there already plugged together. And so it's an important comment to make that really this is a community of platforms really helping the small businesses end to end. And Intuit is a hugely important player within that space to help us drive that connection point for overall financial management. So we'll talk about how you get up and running online. That's probably the number one thing that we saw and heard as this pandemic started is my business is shut down. I still need to be able to sell. People are buying. I need to go online. For us, we defer back to our partner ecosystem to be able to set up an actual store on a website or start selling on a marketplace. And so some of the logos I just shared, whether it be a GoDaddy or a Wix or some kind of platform that you can just immediately get up and running online, that's our front end to that customer experience. But then the transaction flows are incredibly important to make sure that not only are they relevant for the consumer and the way that the item is being sold, but also that can then link back with ease and simplicity to what you're doing in the store and also what you're doing from a back office financial management perspective. Our biggest asset as a company is the wallet, the first wallet that was created, and really it's been pervasive for almost 2 decades now in terms of the way to pay. And that's because there's significant value associated with the ease and simplicity and security of how we enable payments and for a consumer to buy. It's also relevant in a lot of different markets. And so the great thing about having an online experience is you widen your scope of potential buyers to basically the world. Anyone and anywhere can basically transact online. And so PayPal enables that, and it brings a new customer base to you. And then, I think the last thing we would say is that there's a trust component related with PayPal. As folks are entering an online experience, there's a lot of complexity to that, and quite frankly, it can be daunting. And so working with a partner that you really kind of trust and has that level of stability is certainly very important. And I think probably the last point I will make is that there's this very interesting trend happening in the types of payment methods that consumers want to use. and they're very different. Certainly geographically, we see usage being different, certainly by country, but also even by state. And then from a sociographical standpoint, if you're a certain type of consumer or from a certain type of financial background, then you may need certain types of payment methods, i.e. some form of credit to be able to fund something that you need now but pay for later. Or in fact, our Venmo service has been very relevant for a certain cohort of customers, which are relevant for more millennial-based buyers. And so you have to think through the types of products you're selling, the type of customers you have, and then you have to reflect that back into the types of payment methods that you present to them, because they are all seemingly do the same thing, but very nuanced in a very material way when you get down to the usage. So a couple of things that you can do as well, which really kind of help move the financial burden off of the business and onto the partner, onto the payments partner. And so a lot of that is really capturing the sale upfront, getting the cash upfront, but deferring for the consumer in some way. And so there's a couple of ways to do that. But our answer to that really is buy now, pay later. We have a history of offering consumer credit. And so we've been expanding that suite around the world, but in particular in the United States, just over the last few months. And what that really does is it means that if a consumer needs an item now, they can buy either using a line of credit or from PayPal, which is underwritten through what we know about them, or they can pay it over an installment period in 4 installments. And so that they can defer some of that cost to down the line. What that means, though, is that the business gets the money immediately. And so it's almost like a sale. The other kind of concept that's not listed here that sort of does something similar to that is gift cards. And so if you're a small business and you're trying to get cash now, selling gift cards gives you that cash now for a later redemption against stock. And so there's a couple of different levers for that, but trying to bring the money earlier into the ecosystem is really the goal we're trying to help small businesses be successful with. Also, there's a benefit in terms of how you will perform as an online experience. And so what we've seen is that when you introduce a kind of upfront credit message, what happens is that not only do you increase the overall sales for the web experience, because folks don't drop off because they didn't think they could actually afford it when they really can over time, but it also offers more guidance and more thought in terms of the way it's promoted. And then we are also not offering or not charging any more fees for that level of service. So it acts as a sort of same straight line payment concept, but quite frankly, is just at the same price as you would for any other transactions. And so we're seeing like almost half our merchants try to adopt some form of credit from a consumer perspective right now. This is just a little bit more about the product and service, just to give you a little flavor of how that works.
As you know, many shoppers like to browse before they buy. It's a fluid process. They'll place items in the cart, remove items, add other items, before deciding whether to make the purchase or abandon their cart. One way to help close more sales is with dynamic messaging, a unique feature from PayPal that lets customers know about financing offers early in their shopping experience. Dynamic messaging is included when you offer PayPal Pay Later options on your site. Here's how dynamic messaging works. PayPal automatically displays the most relevant Pay Later option to customers based on the products they're browsing. For smaller purchases, shoppers will see Pay in 4 messaging. For larger purchases, shoppers will see messaging about PayPal Credit special financing. Why is this important? Businesses with pay over time messaging on their site saw a 56% increase in overall PayPal average order value. PayPal Pay Later with dynamic messaging is great for customers because it provides increased purchasing power. It's great for businesses because it helps grow sales, average order value, and conversions with no additional costs. It takes just a simple integration to add dynamic messaging to your site. Get started today.
Another great area that can be a stabilizing factor from a financial management perspective is recurring payments and subscriptions. So if you think about it, if you have line of sight into a customer cohort that has a commitment to an ongoing payment stream, that gives you that level of comfort and stability in your financial reporting to know that that is a continuation. Some people, of course, drop off, but what we find is that a lot of folks that sign up for some form of recurring payment subscription after the first month, they really kind of stick with it, and it continues and persists. And so this is something that we've invested a lot in technically to help small businesses be able to set up recurring payment plans, be able to create agreements between the consumer and also the merchant, so that you're able to sort of you have a handshake that means that we can then facilitate the payment for the consumer every month. And so it's an automatic process that once established can be ongoing. But this is a really great way of thinking about all sorts of different subscription types products. And so just to give you kind of some examples of things that we're seeing work really well are things like a monthly subscription to accessories. The razor industry, for example, has done this incredibly well by offering kind of ongoing subscriptions to products. Quite frankly, Amazon does a really good job of this as well, where they have a kind of ongoing, get this every month type model. And then we're seeing it in almost every vertical, sporting goods, even for fish and tackle, or in services like massage, all sorts of different verticals. So it's not limited to one type of category. This can be a concept across pretty much any vertical that you're looking at. Now let's switch to mobile and talk about how mobile very specifically has impacted the contactless experiences that we now expect consumers to want to adopt. Our answer to this is the QR code. And so QR code is a technology that's been around for a long time. It's simply take your camera on your phone, scan it, it opens up a web page or an application, and it takes you to that experience. And so really it's just a way to kind of contactlessly connect to another entity, whether that be a consumer or a business. And so we're seeing significant adoption for this type of activity, particularly in the United States. Anyone going to restaurants, etc. today has likely seen it, and particularly in stores. And then what we've been able to do is create a model where you can use this in your POS experience, and it sort of acts like a cash transaction, but it runs through the PayPal experience. And so if you make a sale in store, the user can pay via a QR code and transact using PayPal, and then those funds go through the PayPal experience, and you can exit them or reuse them in any way you would like. So we're seeing a lot of this happen with smaller businesses as well, like pop-ups. This is an example of how it's used, and so hopefully you kind of draw a real-world example from this video. And then the last thing about mobile is really just the management. And so management of your business generally is very challenging. There's all sorts of different ways you can do that. We've tried, from a PayPal perspective, to really embed all of the touch points you have with PayPal into one business application, so that you can see all of the transactions that are happening. You can see any of the customer history. If you're shipping items, that's listed in there as well. So you can kind of manage your payment infrastructure through that experience. You can also generate your QR codes and make other changes. This experience also syncs back in with others, some of the partners I mentioned, in particular, certainly with QuickBooks. And so you can either use this data within the application or use another application with that same data in it. But what we're trying to do is help expose as much as possible ways in which you can manage your business using the data from the PayPal experiences. And then lastly, let's talk about offline solutions. So there's a reality to the fact that if you're going to move online, the chances are that you're going to use one of the logos that we showed at the beginning of this presentation. And what that means is that you're going to be on a new type of platform. You're going to be on a system that is probably SaaS-based, that is new. And quite honestly, some of those won't work with very legacy older POS systems. And so you are likely to be in a position where you're going to need to reinvest into how your POS works. And so, PayPal has POS offerings, but there are a multitude of players within the space. And what I would say is that, each of them is slightly different depending on the different needs you have as a customer. So it's worth certainly researching them. But the main thing is that you want to make sure that your POS system actually syncs with the online system. That is the hardest part of the omni-channel experience, is to make sure that you're not basically running two businesses. And so that, the connection points that a lot of those commerce platforms that we showed up front do a really good job of, is they help you connect offline and online in terms of the way the orders are managed and worked. And then QuickBooks also does a wonderful job of being able to sync both of those experiences into one financial management experience, and certainly for accountants to be able to see and distinguish between online sales and in-store sales. QuickBooks has made that incredibly easy in partnership with those other commerce platforms and with the transaction data occurring. And so what that means is that then you're in a situation where if you sell an item in store, it's deprecated in your core inventory, so you can't then resell that online by mistake and have a bad buyer experience. It also means that as the transactions come through, you can distinguish between the channels sold. And so let's say you're selling in store in the state of California, you have certain taxes for that, certain items are taxable, certain are not. And then if you're selling online and the buyer's in a different state, there may be a different tax model. If you happen to be then redistributing your inventory and selling that onto a marketplace or some social platform, maybe different taxes for that. And so all of these systems working together create an opportunity, but they're very complicated if you were to try and bring them together yourselves. And so there's certain ways you can do that through the platforms themselves. But I do think that Intuit's a great model for us to be able to look at for that back office and financial management servicing. So the PayPal here POS certainly is one that's very relevant. We have all sorts of contactless NFC type models, Apple Pay, things like that, where folks are going to want to not touch cash, and then also of course take credit cards and PayPal. One other area that we've been investing in is really in the offline world to try and make sure that we get cash to customers, to business customers faster. And so the great thing about PayPal is the instant nature of the way you get your money. And so, as soon as you do a sale, the money's there. It's there in your wallet. You don't have to wait for a week for it to get swept to a bank or on a daily basis and get it the next day. It's literally instant. And so, not always do you need the money instantly. But when you do, we offer a debit card to pull that money out. And so it acts just as a normal debit card would, with the balance in your wallet being the source of funds. It's similar to a bank account. And basically you can pull the funds out of that if you need them on an instantaneous basis, versus waiting for the funds to be settled the next day into the bank account, which can be at times challenging. And so that's really the kind of the meat of the presentation. I'll just talk through some of the kind of key takeaways. For me, I think it's certainly an obvious trend that customers are really turning to online shopping more than ever. And certainly the economy reopening will kind of diminish that a little bit as folks go back into in-store. But behavior has definitely changed for good in some way. And so you're going to need to now think as a small business, and if you're an accountant advising a small business, about how you capitalize on that and how you make sure that you stay up to date and relevant within this new world of commerce. And then, being able to be flexible with going to your buyer versus having them come to you is going to be increasingly important. And that's really a sort of change from the physical store location where those had to, you had to attend in person. And so now you need to think about ways to reach new customer cohorts that you hadn't done before. And so obviously going online is part of that. Finding new ways for them to pay, bringing new funds into the ecosystem through new types of payment marks is super important. And then also thinking about new distribution models through services like social media and other marketplaces as well is pretty key. And like I said, this is sort of a PayPal pitch, if you will. But we offer a range of those services from a payment facilitation standpoint to help businesses, and from a lending standpoint to help businesses and their customers adapt to the dynamically changing market. That for us is the most important thing for our company. We're a very value-driven organization. We're trying to democratize financial services to make payments and financial services available for everyone, in particular those that need it the most, those that are either underserved from a consumer perspective or in smaller businesses that need some form of injection to grow, that need help with financial management over time, and need help basically getting up and online into new channels very quickly. And so that's really the focus for our company, has been for this year and certainly will be going into next year. That's it for my presentation. Thank you all so much for watching.